Hey, Janelle. It's Amanda. Do you need any help letting people in?
I don't see anybody sitting in the lobby right now, waiting to be admitted.
Oh, my screen's showing 13 people.
What? Mine is not showing anyone. Yes, please. Hey, Amanda, I don't have any function to my co-host. Like, I can't do anything other than mute and unmute. I can't
Okay.
assign co-host. I'm gonna log off and log back in.
No, Janelle, stay right where you are.
Okay.
You should have that back. I don't know what happened when I came on earlier, but so welcome to all the commissioners and staffers who were just admitted. We apologize. There's a little technical glitch here and that you had to wait, but everyone should be on. And Janelle, I don't know if you would like to mic check anyone.
Yes, please. So let me call names. Commissioner Bookland.
Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Murphy.
I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson.
Peace.
Thank you. Just scrolling, one moment. Commissioner Eskridge.
Morning.
Morning. Commissioner Havel.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Meyer, we spoke with you. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. Just a little technical glitch.
Okay, I think we had enough people for a quorum. I wasn't keeping track. Do you know, Janelle, did we have 5?
Yes, you have 5. And just for your information, Commissioner Clark will not be joining us today.
Okay. Okay, so I'll call, oops, just a minute, my iPad went down. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. And do we have any guests? We'll welcome the guests. I haven't had a chance to scroll through to see who might be present. Then Janelle, do you want to go through the virtual meeting guidance, please?
Absolutely. Morning, commissioners, members of the public and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm going to review just a couple decorum rules for all. One moment, I'm just going to mute you, Commissioner Havel. Please ensure your mic is muted unless you're speaking. Number 2, please state your name before speaking. Number 3, in general, please have your cameras on if possible if you're speaking. You may turn your cameras off if you're experiencing technological challenges. Number 4, as a reminder, the public chat has been disabled, but you can still send messages to the host if need be, and the meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. Those are the decorum rules for everyone, and let's have a great meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. Michael, are there any announcements?
President Howell, I have one announcement. Item D on the consent calendar, the issuance and sale of promissory notes will require a roll call vote. So in hindsight, maybe I should have pulled that off consent. So we can handle that in one of 2 ways: do a roll call on the complete consent calendar, or remove it and have a separate action.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll do items A, B, C, and E, and then separately do item D with a roll call. Does that make sense? Yeah, Tom's
That's to
showing
me.
thumbs up. Okay. Okay, so do we have any appearances by the public? I don't see anybody raising a hand. Okay, so we will then move to the consent calendar. Do we have a motion? Well, first of all, do we have any questions on any of the items before we get a motion on the first part of the consent calendar, then the last one being item 3D? Okay, I don't see any questions. So we'll move to the consent calendar to approve items 3A, 3B, 3C, and 3E, which is the meeting minutes, capital projects, cash statement, review and approval of sanitary sewer extensions, and then the review of bids and purchase of robotic system for BOD.
Yeah, it's Wilson. I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Wilson. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Eskridge, I'll second.
Okay, a second by Commissioner Eskridge. All those in favor of approving items 3A, B, C, and E, say aye.
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 Hi, this is Brad Murphy. I'll abstain on the minutes.
Okay, so Brad's approving B, C, and E, but abstaining on the minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brad. And then, okay, so that motion carries. Then we'll move to item 3D, which is review and adoption of the resolution for promissory notes. Do we have a motion?
Okay, it's Wilson. I'll move approval of 3D as presented.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Wilson. Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Bookland. I'll second.
Okay, with a second by Commissioner Bookland to approve the review and adoption of resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of up to almost $8.7 million in general obligation sewage system promissory notes, series 2022A, and providing other deals and covenants with respect thereto. Janelle, do you want to do the roll call, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Bookland?
Aye.
No, Commissioner Clark is absent. Commissioner Eskridge?
Aye.
Commissioner Foster?
Aye.
Commissioner Hobble?
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy?
Aye.
Commissioner Swan, excuse me, Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion carries.
Flipped yourself off there, Tom.
Still off, sorry. I have to move the cursor and it sometimes stays right over it. Okay. So we'll move on to topics. So that motion carried. We'll move on to topics. 4A is the approval of the fourth quarter 2021 sewer service charges. Was somebody going to introduce the item?
Yes, I will. I'm Todd Giebert, Capital Planning Engineer for the district. I'm here to report on the fourth quarter sewer service charges. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Looks
Yes.
good, Todd.
It's a
Okay,
beautiful
thank
thing.
you. Okay, fourth quarter sewer service charges. I have to admit, I feel a little bit like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, in that the report for the service charges for the fourth quarter is very similar to the previous 3 quarters this year. You see here, service charges were approximately $11.4 million, which is about $443,000 over budget for the quarter. But as far as the year goes, you see the very similar amounts collected in each quarter, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, and the actual revenues per day are very similar as well. In my 10 years of doing this, I've never seen such stability among quarters. Usually we see quarters 1 and 4 being a little bit below average for the year, and quarters 2 and 3 being above average, largely due to the influence of weather. But this year with the drought, we haven't seen that effect. So very stable revenue throughout the year. For the year to date then, total revenues are about $45.1 million, which is $1.7 million over the budgeted amount. And the amount that we estimated in the 2022 budget for 2021 revenues is $45 million. So just about right on our budget figure or budget estimate. So looking at revenues, the surplus productions by month, we started back in August of last year, estimating we'd be about $1.5 million over budget. When we prepared the budget in October and adopted it, that number grew to about 1.6 million. And so we ended up at about 1.7 million in the end with a kind of a strong fourth quarter. So just about again, right over our right on our budget estimate of $45 million. So this is how for the fourth quarter, the revenues break down, looking at actual versus budgeted revenues. You know, again, the 4 pollutant parameters were all above the budgeted revenues in the fourth quarter. Volume, though, again, with the drought, well below. And for the year end, the same type of distribution, pollutant parameters all above, and the volume well below again. And this is of significant note, the volume you see here, almost $1.5 million below budget. This is of concern because this is our most volatile parameter. It also makes up 30% of the service charge revenue. So we have a bad volume year that will be reflected, you know, in our operating budget and our CIP as well in our debt service. So that's one thing that the rate study that we're looking at doing here this year is looking to aim is there a better way of, you know, getting a more stable revenue stream through this volume parameter. So moving on to looking at the flows throughout the quarter, this is showing flows to the plant by month. You see that we peaked in March with a flow of about 39 million gallons per day to the plant. Typically then we would rise throughout the summer months and then come down at the end of the year, but instead this year it was just all down. And this is not due to declining water use from our users. What this represents is less inflow from severe storms throughout the year, and also less infiltration throughout the year on an everyday basis. You can see how much that is. It's anywhere from 4 to 5 million gallons per day, it looks like, from this graph. So later in the agenda, we'll be talking about the II program and a contract amendment to Brown and Caldwell to further their work this year and seeing if we can eliminate some of this II from our system. So just to strengthen the relationship between plant flow and precipitation, I included this, this plot. Flow shown in blue, precipitation in red. You can see for each of the years, there's really a strong relationship. They go in lockstep. So for 2021, we had about 22 inches of rain, with about 12 inches below our average amount. And you have to go back to 2012. That was a very similar year. And you see about the same effect. Flows were in that 36 MGD range. So one final word about flows and the volume parameter. This shows daily flows now to the plant for the fourth quarter. And what I wanted to illustrate here was first, you know, we always think of flows to the plant being about 40 MGD, and historically they are. But this quarter, you know, they really hovered around 36 MGD. And we saw a couple dips at Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's not unique. What is unique, though, is the magnitude of these dips. In December, late December, during the Christmas holiday, we actually got below 29 MGD to the plant. And you have to go back pretty much to 2012 to see a flow that low to the plant. So just a word about the pollutant parameters then. This is loading suspended solids to the plant. All the pollutants followed the same general pattern in 2021. And just a reminder here about why we saw such large surpluses. You go back to 2020 and the pandemic, you see how the loadings dropped throughout 2020. So when we did rate setting for 2021 in the fall of 2020, we assumed that loads would stay at their pandemic levels. Instead, shortly after that, after rate setting, they increased markedly and have kind of plateaued throughout 2021. So that represents this large surplus that you're seeing here in 2021. But the loads are really not that much larger than what we saw in 2019, just before the pandemic. So I'll leave you with just a reminder about how actual versus budgeted revenues have compared throughout time. The last 2 years have been fairly volatile. This year, $1.7 million above budget, but last year we were that same amount under budget. And if you look back at the last 10 years, there's some ups and downs, but on average, actual revenues have been only 1% above what we budgeted. So we're doing fairly well over the long term. So the requested action today, staff is asking the commission to approve sewer service charges for the fourth quarter of 2021 through approval of resolution R7. And with that, I will take any questions that the commission may have.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Does any commissioner have any questions? Anybody have any questions? Okay, so the sewer service charge information, I believe, was sent out yesterday.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Greg Freeze has his hand up.
Oh,
to ask a
okay. I didn't
question
see it
as our
pop up on
City of
my.
Madison rep.
Okay, Greg, you want to say something? I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand pop up on my screen. Oh, there it is. I had to scroll more.
Thank you, President Hubble. And this is really to make Todd's life difficult. So I have a question. So Todd, you obviously know we've talked during the year. Madison is over budget for this year, and so and I understand the kind of the averaging you described there, right? For so especially for TSS on that slide you showed. That's the one I was thinking of. So for next year, what we're trying to decide is, should we, and we don't want to, we would prefer to be under budget, right? So when we get our guests for next year from you, how much should we pad that, right? As I guess what I'm getting at. So the system you use will take into account, well, I would assume would overweight the last year's data. So we'll kind of self-correct. Do you see what I'm trying to ask here? I don't want to be low again next year.
Are you referring to the effective smoothing that we use, Greg?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to ask is looking at this graph specifically, although our parameters were higher in a couple other areas, as you know, but this is a good example, right? TSS. So for next year, when you come up with your average or your estimated budget, is it going to be high, relying largely on this year's loads, which were dramatically high? Well, not dramatically, but pretty much higher than 2020. So our budgeted numbers for next year will be higher to reflect what really happened this year. I'm trying to figure out how much I have to pad our budget for our operating budget for next year, I guess, is what it really amounts to. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. I think the first point would be, I think that the loads have plateaued here and are starting to stabilize. They were very volatile here between like the third quarter of 2020 and say the second quarter of last year. The other thing I would point out is that effective smoothing that you mentioned is that if the loads do go down, your bills would be a little lower in 2022 as a result of that effective smoothing. I can't guarantee that, but I don't think you have to pad it as much maybe as you might be thinking, would be my short answer.
Okay, I appreciate that, Todd. Thank you. And this is not, I understand how this works and I understand why this happens and I just don't like to go to the finance committee to explain to them why this happens. So.
Right, I understand.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Greg, for your question, and Todd. And if you have any other thoughts, Todd, you can get in touch with Greg.
Sure.
Okay, so any other questions? I didn't see other hands pop up. So do we have a motion to approve the fourth quarter 2021 sewer service charges?
Wilson, I'm happy to make that motion to approve the service charges as indicated by the resolution presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Meyer. So motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the fourth quarter 2021 sewer service charges. Any discussion or additional comments? Seeing none.
President Hubble, just
Yeah.
a reminder to the commission, we have on the commission agenda coming up in a few weeks, with this increased revenue amount, how to direct those funds. And we'll be, our budget manager will be returning to the commission and with some specific action on that.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, so we have the motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the fourth quarter sewer service charges. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And do we have any opposed? Okay, none, motion carries. That will take us to, excuse me, the acceptance of work for the Nine Springs Liquid Processing Improvements, Phase 1.
Okay, am I able to share my screen now?
Yeah, you can share your screen now, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I've not done this before, so it's a little. Okay. Good morning. I'm Jeff Clavis, a project engineer here at the district. I was the project manager for the work. The presentation is a recommendation for acceptance of the work of the Nine Springs Liquid Processing Improvements Phase 1. As I said, I was a project manager for this work. Other district staff involved in the project, John Bembinster and Dave Lundy, responsible for the electrical construction. Craig Pascal and Matt Herbs responsible for the process control system installation and implementation. Alan Grooms managed the shutdowns and startups, and all of the shutdowns and startups were executed by the operations staff as well as the electrical maintenance staff. The consulting engineer for the project was Strand Associates. The general contractor is CED Smith Construction. The photo here is of our new installation of our new ultraviolet light system. The liquid processing improvements enable us to effectively manage future peak flows, specifically prevents in-plant overflows, improves peak flow treatment, minimizes process disruption during peak flow events. Also, we improve liquid processing reliability by replacing or rehabilitating critical infrastructure. The project addressed hydraulic and process peak flow issues primarily by utilizing existing facilities. While this reduced project cost, it increased the complexity of the construction scheduling and coordination. Integration and implementation of the new systems required multiple shutdowns and careful monitoring of plant processes. For most of the project duration, the plant was operated with reduced capacity, sometimes actually less than half capacity. The construction work took 18 months. The substantial completion ran about 4 weeks beyond our original scheduled date for substantial completion. The ready for final payment date was extended further, mostly to accommodate the delayed delivery of some minor equipment for the project. The UV disinfection system was ready for service for the 2021 season. The work of removing the old system and replacing it took place in the October 20 to April 21 timeframe. The total project was completed within budget. For the construction contract, there were 65 change orders amounting to about a 3% increase. There were no significant changes to scope. Mostly the change orders, what I would describe as detailed change orders, making pieces and parts fit, replacing what was needed to move the project forward, and then repairs and replacements that were best done within the context of the project. The photo to the right actually is a change order. The new blue valve, you can see my arrow there. The new blue valve was part of the contract work. The intention was to reuse the existing pipe. The pipe to the right was fine, was in good condition. To the left, the existing flange was corroded to the point where we couldn't reuse it. The contractor fabricated new pipe, cut off the old pipe, and welded this in place. Just a little perspective. This is a 30-inch diameter steel pipe, and all of the work was done about 18 feet off the floor. We're now able to better utilize final clarifier capacity, mostly better utilize the west final clarifiers, and also the improvements allow a more equal split of peak flows between the east and west plants. The improvements to the existing plant to better utilize the capacity and peak flow performance are listed here. The implemented biological contact process, done work for the west plant mixed liquor channels, the plant 2 RAS control and measurement, plant 1 final clarifier effluent conveyance, effluent diversion structure, and the lagoon pumping station. The locations of these project elements are shown here. The biological contact process implementation, which revises the flow pattern through the aeration tanks, was completed in both the east aeration tanks and the west aeration tanks. The west mixed liquor channel takes flow from the aeration tanks to the final clarifiers. We increased the size of the final clarifier effluent for plant 1 here. The plant 2 RAS control and measurements improvements were done in the aeration control building 3. As way as explanation for that, mixed liquor flows from the aeration tanks to the final clarifiers, where in the final clarifiers, activated sludge settles out. Some of the activated sludge that settles out, sorry, I lost my arrow. Some of the sludge that settles out is pumped to the digesters, and that's waste activated sludge. The remainder of the activated sludge is pumped back to the aeration tanks, is returned to the aeration tanks, return activated sludge or RAS. The old valves that were in place in the aeration control building, sorry, I keep losing my arrow. The old valves that were in place in the aeration control building were very difficult to operate, particularly at peak flow events. And the open channel measurement that was in place would flood out and become inaccurate. So we replaced the valves with new control valves and electric mag meters for flow measurement. The other items for the peak flow process were the effluent diversion structures here, and then the lagoon return pump station here. For the biological contact process, the implementation was in the aeration basins. What we're looking at here is the west plant, which actually has 2 plants within it. There's plant 3 and plant 4. For the work to be done in here, the tanks had to be taken out of service. We did this by taking, isolating the plants from each other. So on the photo on the right, we took the entire west plant out of service, installed plates to separate them and to isolate some of the primary tanks. Once the meters and valves were installed in the gallery below this channel, I'm sorry. So once all these plates were in, we put plant 4 back into service, and then work was done in plant 3. Valves and meters were installed in the gallery below this. And then once those meters and valves were in service, then we transferred over where plant 4 was taken out of service, and then plant 3 was put back into service. And I just want to comment here that the complexity of these shutdowns and startups and transfers is not just draining and filling the tanks, but also maintaining the efficacy of the biological process throughout those changes and afterwards. For the west plant mixed liquor channels, we needed to increase the capacity of the channels to convey, so that we were able to convey 90 MGD through the west plant. So We increased the height of the walls to be able to convey more flow. We also worked on replacing the aerators in these channels. You can see that the old pipes were really badly corroded. There's like only half a pipe section here. The new aerators and pipes were put in place. And here you see the completed channel where the walls are raised, the aerators are in place, and the channel is ready to be placed back in service. At the effluent diversion structure, this controls and measures overflow to the lagoons. The new structure here and the metering manhole were built just to the east of the existing overflow structures. The new diversion structure has actuated weir gates that allow greater rate of diversion without sending flow through the effluent building. This prevents east plant flooding, enables greater flow rates through the west plant, and protects the effluent building from possible flooding during peak flow events. Here where we can see the work underway, the east plant flow comes through this pipe, joins up with west plant as well, and goes to the effluent building. The pipe on the right, it's a 6-foot diameter pipe. You can see the iron marker here standing next to it. This goes out to the lagoon. So what the structure that we built in between allows us to take flow directly from this east plant effluent pipe, put it directly into the overflow and send it to the lagoon without having to go through the effluent building first. Picture to the left is just kind of give you an idea of the scale of the building, of the structure, I'm sorry. At the lagoon pumping station, returns that stored overflow so that we can then, the pumping station allows us to send it back to the plant. Most of the work was construction of a screening facility. To do that, the contractor had to both isolate the construction site from the lagoon. They did it with this dam here. And then for the excavation, they had to hold back the soils as well as be able to water the site. The completed intake structure, is here where you can see the screen and the isolation gate in place. So the structure allows us to both isolate it from the lagoon and prevents debris from getting into the pumps. We added a redundant pump, new controls, and also metering of the flow. Both the isolation gate and the stairs to the screening structure provides a safer work environment for our staff. Just as the actual pump station itself, the screening structure is here. The pump station is underground in here. So the screening intake is here, connects to the pump station, and then sends back to the plant. And also this is where the controls, we provided new controls there. For reliability improvements, for the infrastructure within the plant, those items were the UV disinfection, electrical substations, process control system work, primary influent pipelining, and also work on primary clarifiers 1 and 2. Those items are located here. The ultraviolet light system was installed in the effluent building. We provided a new electrical substation, which replaced 3 substations. U6 now provides the service that stations 11, 12, and 13 once did. The process control system upgrades replaced digital control units related to the liquid processing system. They're located in the west blower building, aeration control buildings 4, 1, 2, and 3, and also in the east blower building. The primary influent pipelining is this red line here, where we went from the east junction structure, takes a bend, and then goes into the east primary influent channel. And finally, the rehab projects, we replaced concrete at the primary tanks 1 and 2. For the UV disinfection replacement, the old system was obsolete. It was no longer supported by the manufacturer and required labor-intensive maintenance. The new system is energy efficient, self-cleaning, and more maintenance-friendly for our staff. Here we see where they're removing the old, all of the equipment is already gone at this point, but the walls of the old channels are gone, and they're removing the slab, the channel slabs. This is where the new channel, UV channels are under construction. Then have the UV banks in place. And then you have you can see the cables to all of the lamps, and then the hydraulic hoses as well. Each of these banks can be raised and lowered mechanically. There's a hydraulic system, which was different than the old system where the entire thing had to be lifted out by a crane. The individual on an individual bank, this is one in a raised position, and you can see the holders for the lamps. The individual lamps go into each of these holders, and when a lamp burns out, you can actually just change one at a time. This unit is in the raised position. You can also do it when they're in the channel. And again, this is much simpler in terms of replacing a burned out lamp than having to remove the entire bank from the channel. Let's see. Okay, I can sort of see this one. I'm sorry. So the individual tubes that hold the lamps have a cleaning system, and that's these units here. And these are like, they're squeegees. And again, they're mechanically controlled by the hydraulic system, and they slide up and down to clean off the lamps. So throughout the season, then the lamps stay clear and maintain their efficiency as far as the transfer of UV light into the system. For the electrical substations, we replaced 3 outdoor substations with 1 indoor substation. Removing all of the substation in indoors protects the equipment. It's easier to maintain, and also the new equipment and the substations is much safer for operations and maintenance for the staff. The new substation is located directly to the south of the effluent building. We can see here where they're building the base slab of the structure. Just wanted to point out in the photo to the right here, where you see in the background, you see the new unit substation under construction. The 4 large conduits to the right is where the cables that carry the high voltage power into the substation. And then in the substation, the power is stepped down and, for lack of a better way, split up and then redistributed throughout the plant through this group of cables that will go through this group of conduits. Below, you see the substation equipment, the transformers that step down the power, and then the switchgear in the middle that is used to distribute the power throughout the plant. For the process control system replacement, it completes the upgrades that were completed started in 2013. We'll provide new state-of-the-art controls, and which includes a touchscreen smart interface, allows the operators and maintenance staff to not only control the equipment, but they can on-site see histories and trends and make adjustments as needed there. The project replaced with state-of-the-art equipment. We replaced basically what was 1960s space age technology, and 1980s digital control units were replaced. The other aspect of the process control system work is that there's a separation of equipment power from equipment control, and that provides for a safer operation and maintenance environment for staff. At the, sorry, I lost my page here. For the primary influent pipelining, I have a photo below here, shows the bypass setup that was necessary for lining the pipe. The flow normally flows underground from the flow splitter. There's a pipe that goes here to here. And then from here, there's a pipe that goes here and then takes a left. But we lined from this junction structure this way. So 3 large pumps, very large pumps were installed at the flow splitter and pump flow through this HDPE pipe to the primary influent channel. We needed to install a new access structure. We knew that the pipe was in poor condition. That's why we were lining it. When we excavated to build a new structure, found that parts of the pipe, the crown here, and parts of the side pipe collapsed. We installed partially installed the structure, provided a temporary repair to the pipe so then that the structure could be completed and backfilled, and then the pipelining followed after this. For the rehabilitation for primary tanks 1 and 2, we replaced the deteriorated concrete there. What that required was basically cutting up all of the existing concrete on the top of the tanks. We replaced basically everything above the normal water line. You can see in this photo where this fellow is sawing the concrete that the normal water line is about here. Above the water line, you can see that there's a lot of deterioration. Below the water line where the concrete is always submerged, the tanks are in good condition and serviceable for probably another 90 years. Here you can see them prepping the concrete. So the existing concrete is in good condition. They'll be adding to that. And then the final for this, the outcome was we get what looks like a new tank on top of a 90-year-old tank. So the recommendation this morning is acceptance of the work for the Nine Springs Liquid Processing Improvements, Phase 1, authorization of final payment to CED Smith Construction with adoption of Resolution 2022-0113R8. And with that, I can take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Jeff, for the detailed inventory of what occurred. Do we have any questions? Okay, I don't see any hands. Nice photo with all the snow. A few inches that we have. Okay.
This was from during the project, actually.
Well, it was. Oh,
Yeah.
Still working. Was that last winter then?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
I think, I mean, based on what this trench looks like, it was like probably the beginning of January.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I don't see any hands for any questions. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution for the liquid processing improvements, acceptance of work?
I'm happy to make that motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by?
I'll second Commissioner Eskridge.
Second by Commissioner Eskridge. So motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Eskridge to approve the resolution accepting the work for the Nine Springs liquid processing improvements. Any further discussion or comments?
I might just notice because it was such a great, thorough presentation that there are no questions, but a very impressive project, Jeff, and well executed under budget. Really good work. Thank you.
Good job to the whole staff that was involved with this. Okay.
President Hubble, I also wanted to jump in here, and we provided a little bit more detail here today, and I think it's important. When the commission approves a large promissory note like you just did, in the previous action, sometimes it's, you know, it's a lot of money, and we thought, well, what is the public getting for $13 million, and really getting into a little bit more of what was involved. And this one did 4 major things for us, and why it's a big milestone. We're replacing critical infrastructure. We are increasing our capacity, and we've improved our resilience for peak storm events. And then we're lowering our operating costs and improving safety. So all of those elements are part of this project. And during the 2018 storm event, which is all, I'm sure, in our minds, some of these systems were at the brink of overtopping and failure because of the large flows. And if we were to have another storm event like we did in 2018, we would be able to handle it and manage it here with these improvements. So it's something to really celebrate, and Jeff's ability to coordinate the teams, all the teams involved to make this happen, is well noted. Jeff, great job Jeff did managing this project.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Yeah, it was a lot of work, and I agree with the idea of the 4 things that it did for the district. Kind of checked off many of the boxes we've been looking to check off. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None. Okay, motion carries. That will take us to item 4C, the increased fees and professional service contract amendment with Brown and Caldwell for the 2021 Inflow Infiltration Reduction Program. Jen Barobas, I think you're gonna lead this off.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Hubble. All right. Is that sharing the slide screen?
Looks good, Jen.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. I am Jen Hurlbus, Collection System Engineer. Today, I'll provide a progress update on the Inflow and Infiltration Reduction Program and our plan for the next phase of work. Just to recap, Inflow and Infiltration describes excess clear water from groundwater and stormwater sources that flows into the sanitary sewer system through various defects or connections. Our collection system and treatment plant both have capacity limitations. Even with the improvements that have been made at the treatment plant, there is still a limit. And so, as you know, our concern with making sure we're having an inflow and infiltration reduction program is so that, especially during significant storm events, that we are not overloading the system and causing sewer backups into homes and buildings, or sewer overflows into rivers or lakes. So when we're talking about our inflow and infiltration program, or we often shorten it to II, the value that we're looking at for this program, there are several ways that we do this. And, you know, just as a reminder, you know, this inflow and infiltration was identified as a top priority during our owner community meetings held in 2019. A lot of that was, you know, the understanding the vulnerability that our system saw during that August 2018 event, as that top picture does show, of the sanitary sewer overflow that occurred at that time. So our goal of our regional program is to maintain the flow standards defined by the Sewers Use Ordinance. I&I reduction will be required to meet this goal. The value of reducing I&I to maintain the flow standards is that the need for capacity increases is reduced or deferred. Less II means that the system performs as it was designed to, and that increases resilience to changing weather patterns. There's just more available capacity if you're not being taxed with the smaller rain events. And perhaps most simply, we need to have an I&I reduction program to meet our regulatory requirements. So last April, the Commission accepted a multi-year plan to gradually build budget capacity for implementing the program. This was the implementation plan that was presented last April. I'll mention there was a few shifts in the schedule a little bit further along here. So I just wanted to point out again, startup tasks transition into an annual program work that is starting around in 2023. And you'll notice as we shift away from the blue lines up above into the green lines down below, that's when full program implementation will happen by 2025. So since plan acceptance, work included updating and calibrating the district's collection system hydraulic and hydrologic model, and continued guidance on the regional program development with the advisory committee. I've noted advisory committee meeting topics along the timeline. In May, we facilitated discussion on the questions that you all raised during our study session in April. It provided an opportunity for the advisory committee to hear what questions you had, and then they provided additional feedback based on your comments and questions. In July, we focused on building equity in the program, really trying to understand how are we going to balance the different needs of our owner communities. And work plan limits and thresholds were introduced in September, but we realized that more analysis is needed before any final recommendations are made regarding this. And in December, we presented the plan for the next phase of work to the advisory committee, and they were in agreement with our kind of shifts in schedule. And then the model update and calibration, originally planned to take 2 years, was completed a year early at the end of 2021. So the majority of work completed by Brown and Caldwell in 2021 was to convert and update the district's hydraulic model. The update included calibration of the model hydrology. This allows the model to be a tool for locating areas with potential capacity restrictions and high I&I rates. The primary rainfall event selected for the model calibration occurred October 1st through the 2nd of 2019. A total rainfall depth of 3.4 inches was measured at the Dane County Regional Airport. This event produced a flow response in the collection system that falls between a 2 to 5 year flow recurrence on a depth, duration, frequency, or DDF curve. I'd also like to note that this rainfall event was very consistent throughout the district's service area. So that was also a good calibration event for us. And this event did stress the system enough to generate a notable peak flow response, but not large enough to cause changes to operations or cause sanitary sewer overflows and basement backups. So the pictures shown here, I've shown before, are from more extreme events where SSOs, like the top picture, and extreme flooding, like the bottom picture, has occurred. For model calibration, we do not want to use these events with sanitary sewer overflows because the wastewater is then lost from the system and reduces volume for downstream areas. And significant stormwater flooding conditions likely do not happen from every rain event and can skew that inflow response and the calibration as well. The graph shown here compares the measured flow at pump station 5 in blue and the flow simulated by the model after calibration in red for an approximate 2-week period prior and 1 week after the October 1st through 2nd, 2019 calibration event. As you can note, we're kind of seeing that large peak event right here is where the October 1st, and it's a slightly delayed response. And then the flows do stay higher for several, in this case, about a week after that, that peak event. So we actually, during the calibration, took a little bit different approach and utilized the groundwater modules in PC Swim, the modeling software we're using. And that allowed us to actually replicate the majority of the flow response. So this indicates that I&I in the district system is predominantly from infiltration. As Todd noted, when we were looking at the plant flows and how they've come down on average 4 to 5 MGD. You know, one might say a drought year is not really good for justifying an I&I program, but clearly we've seen that there is that groundwater infiltration that has reduced our flows down now that groundwater table and the lake levels have come down. So when we utilized and simulated this groundwater aquifer response, that does seem to be very much the controlling factor for kind of average daily flow. And then obviously we will have some larger peaks that can occur from inflow as well. So for a couple of notes on the calibration, that we did see this heavy groundwater response. The parameters were very similar across the district service area. So that was, I think, an interesting thing to note, and that we didn't really see or have to utilize as many of the parameters to simulate that inflow, or what we would call that fast response. So having this calibrated model will allow us to assess how the system responds under different conditions, and it'll be a valuable tool used in our next phase of work, the capacity and cost effectiveness evaluation. So as I mentioned, the schedule that we had approved last April has been updated. We did a slight shift for some of the 2022 scope of work. The model calibration was completed sooner than expected. So, and originally the capacity and cost benefit analysis was expected to take 2 years and was planned for 2022 to 2023. The majority of the feedback that we heard from you and the advisory committee in 2021 is that we do need to provide clarity on the cost versus benefits of the program. With that in mind, we decided to focus on the capacity and cost effectiveness evaluation in 2022 and delay the flow monitoring plan to 2023. Another benefit to this shift in schedule is the results of the evaluation, the capacity evaluation, will better inform where we should focus our flow monitoring efforts. Advisory committee input also supported this shift in the schedule. Their feedback was that the flow monitoring program should first look for the highest contributing I&I areas, which are typically the most cost-effective approach. So please note that the schedule shifts did not modify the anticipated program costs by a year. The level of effort for each task did not change, rather the timing of the work did, but it was shifted to maintain the yearly program budgeted costs. So for 2022, there are 2 tasks planned: community customer outreach and the capacity and cost effectiveness evaluation. Our plan is to kick off the outreach efforts at an owner community meeting in late spring or summer. Individual follow-up is expected after the large meeting presentation. Since today's resolution is for continuing the engineering services, I would like to go into a little more detail on the planned approach for the capacity and cost effectiveness evaluation. So our next task will be the capacity evaluation. The capacity evaluation requires a rainfall event to compare different scenarios to. Rainfall data from 1948 through 2021 was run through the model to generate flow for each pump station service area and develop a flow recurrence curve. That curve used the long-term simulation results and then plotted how our system was responding during those. So keep in mind that the events shown in this table are the frequency of flow in the collection system and not a rainfall recurrence interval. It's a little bit different way of thinking about it than I think what maybe we typically tend to talk about rainfall events, but we are specifically talking about flow recurrence in our system. So what we will do is use that flow event frequency to select an event that will be used for our scenario modeling. And typically that's either going to be a 5-year or a 10-year. We're kind of going to run that sensitivity analysis to really decide which level is the one that we are targeting. But so for right now, if we use the 10-year event, we would basically apply the rainfall that did occur on July 5th through the 7th of 1993 onto our current system and use that for the models to compare. So basically, again, that rainfall event has shown that it would show kind of that flow recurrence in our system and impact the system on what we would determine as a 10-year kind of event of how our system is, that kind of a level of service, I guess, is what our system would be looking at. So I think, I'll just note too that, the highest peak flow in our flow recurrence interval, you'll note, was June of 2008. And it's, roughly, I specifically asked Brown and Caldwell for, kind of a little bit more background. And it was, they said, our model has limitations when we encounter extremely large, rare events. And, you could say that the 2008 was between a 50 to 100-year range. But they really, the model results can be used with reasonable confidence for events that have less than a 10-year recurrence interval. Above that, the results should really be treated as approximate. And the August 2018 event is an outlier. We had very different rain throughout our collection system, and it was an extremely large event. So, simulations, if we only used rainfall from Dane County Regional Airport, wouldn't really represent what had happened on the west side. So we really just, don't even consider that as a model event to look at. So for the capacity evaluation, we're going to look at 4 scenarios that will be modeled to assess the impact of I&I on system capacity. It's a combination of existing and future flows with existing and increasing I&I conditions due to system degradation. So what we'll do is we'll take it'll show these capacity limitations, then we'll determine what improvements to our system would need to be made to increase the capacity to convey the wastewater without I&I reduction and calculate the cost to make those improvements. So this is a generic curve used to illustrate what we expect to be able to show at the end of the capacity and cost effectiveness evaluation. We'll take costs to transport and treat the wastewater under the 4 scenarios from the capacity evaluation. How much II would need to be reduced to meet a given level of service? How much does it cost to reach that level? So when we add the cost to transport and treat, plus the cost of I&I control, it gives us this total cost curve. And we're looking for that cost-effective removal point, or the knee of the curve, which would be our target. So to continue our work on the I&I reduction program, the Commission is requested to approve the resolution amending the agreements and authorizing the transaction amount for 2021 Infiltration and Inflow Reduction Program Engineering Services with Brown and Caldwell for $275,000. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jen, for the presentation, particularly all the information on the modeling. Do we have any questions? Anybody have any questions?
I do. I can't find my.
Okay, go ahead, Grant.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen, for the presentation. And sounds good, the change in the plan that you described. You talked about some things we learned already related to infiltration as opposed to inflow and the sort of impact of the water table. Would you mind just going back to that and kind of restating it? I didn't quite capture, I think, what you were sharing with us there.
Sure. So we have noted that when we did, so the model has, when we're doing calibration, we refer to kind of the rainfall dependent inflow and infiltration. So you're taking it's almost like having, it's different systems of, say, storage of water, and how much the calibration is basically, there's parameters that you can use that tell it how much of that water from each of those storage reservoirs is getting into your sanitary sewer pipe network. So the hydrology part is the stormwater and groundwater. So, you know, you have that groundwater aquifer, and then you usually have what we kind of refer to as almost like a soil saturation level, you know, that will fluctuate more. And so that's allowing us to model that antecedent soil moisture condition. So when you have like a wet year, and so 2018 and 2019 were very wet years. So by the time in the October of 2019, lake levels were still at max. Groundwater was anticipated to be at least 2 feet higher than typical. And then it had rained consistently, and then we had back-to-back storms. And so as that, you know, the groundwater level, that's kind of your base, but then another rain event comes and the soils are already saturated. There's no more room for that water to go. And so it just keeps kind of rising to that level. And so then that hydrostatic pressure is kind of allowing it to go into more cracks or leaks or joints that maybe didn't have water underneath this year's conditions when that water level was down. And so that's, I think, what we're really starting to see is that we had this drought year, like levels are down, 2020 was dry too. So we're just seeing that we're having less volume, and that is indicative of that groundwater infiltration not occurring as much under the drier conditions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So for the same kind of rain event, it's still really dependent on what were the starting conditions before the event. So if there was
absolutely,
it can absorb, and there's not as much even from the same rainfall amount.
Yes, and that's why we look at the flow recurrence interval and the type of event that caused the conditions to happen versus just like a design storm event, because you can have, you know, what would be considered a 5-year rainfall event occur right now that may not impact the system nearly as much as that same 5-year event would have impacted the system in this October of 2019, just because the ground was so wet to begin with.
So in some ways, as like a series of smaller events might still produce increase I&I, even though it seemed like a remarkable event happened. And on the other hand, a big event might be fully absorbed if everything's dry, and so there's the correspondence is more about those overall conditions than the precipitation event.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Okay, anybody else?
One quick question, Tom.
Go ahead, Ezra.
Just making sure I think I understand all of this, but then the words get me tripped up a little bit when we talk about increasing fees, et cetera, for the 2021 engineering services. But of course, 21-21's over. We're increasing the scope, increasing the budget, and extending the schedule of an existing contract rather than launching a new contract for this next like phase or round of effort. Am I on track, Jen?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just
Okay.
felt that, given the way that we had the program implementation plan and where we were in the stage of work, that, to put this out in the traditional kind of new RFP did not make sense at this time, and to just continue our services and just increase the transaction amount on the existing contract.
Perfect. Understood. I'm ready to make a motion to approve the resolution as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the resolution by Commissioner Meyer. Do we have a second?
I'd be happy to second it, Murphy.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Murphy. Any further questions or comments or discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None, motion carries. Okay, so that takes care of items under number 4. So we'll move to the Chief Engineer and Director's report. Michael, you have the CED report.
Thank you. Thank you, President Hubble. I have one report today regarding the Omicron variant. The latest COVID variant, as we're seeing and experiencing, is highly contagious, and the district is currently experiencing its highest levels of COVID cases since the pandemic started nearly 2 years ago. Our primary interest has always been to protect those employees who report to the plant to keep it running, which is becoming more challenging with Omicron. That being said, we have went back to our past policy of locking down the plant. And by locking down, I mean we are we're not open to the public, and staff who can work from home are encouraged to do so and to only come to the plant when necessary. We're continuing to minimize outside guests and visitors for the at least the foreseeable future. We've instituted our emergency management committee to monitor this on a weekly basis. We are strictly following OSHA guidance with regard to vaccination policy, and we're taking it at this point on a week-by-week basis. So I just wanted commissioners to know that we've reverted back to some of our more conservative policies with activity at the plant. And if there are questions, I'll take them now, but that concludes my report.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So now that the original cloth masks that we're all working don't work with Omicron, is the district providing the KN95 or the N95 masks for the employees?
We do provide those masks. I would have to follow back on the specifics on who's wearing what, but we are providing the correct specification of masks for the work.
Okay, good. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so now we have a presentation of a new district video.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Amanda Wagner, Communications and Public Affairs Manager. Shortly, I'm going to pull up and show you all a 3-minute video, but I wanted to just take a moment to provide a little bit of background information. So early last year, we solidified our communications and marketing plan, and one piece of that is a video strategy. So as we look to highlight the district, build the district's brand, and just build awareness of the work that we need to do, video is an important piece of that, in part because it's very engaging and something that people within the digital space really enjoy interacting with. So we had a video crew come in over the summer to help us produce actually 2 videos. You're going to just see one of them today. And this is our Who We Are video. And this video is really about communicating who we are and what we do, and starting to highlight some of the more unseen aspects of the plant, things that the public might not be aware of or might not or don't see on a regular basis. As you all know, so much of our work and our infrastructure is in pump stations and underground and pipes and at the plant. So this video is really intended to both highlight our work, get some employee voices out there, and show the unseen. So give me one moment or 3. I have to get the video shared. And it's always a little pokey.
For a long time, wastewater plants just wanted to focus on what's going on at the plant. But that approach has its limitations. And so since the plant can't keep every pollutant out of the drain, we need to go upstream into the community and educate people, introduce them to the sewage district because they might not know who we are or even where their water goes, and help them take the steps to protect water proactively, keeping those pollutants out of the drain.
What's really motivating for me to come to work is we work for the public. We work for our neighbors. I work for my neighbors. And we do something that real value to them. We keep their water clean and we keep everyone healthy through the work we do.
Every person that I've met so far is just passionate and loves their job and knows how it fits into the puzzle of the work that the district does.
The mission at the sewer district is to protect human health and the environment. And so we take that job very seriously.
A lot of people forget what happens when they flush the toilet or send something down the drain, but we're here every day, making sure we can treat that water for the benefit of the community so that we can keep our streams that we discharge into clean and basically recycle the water.
So we have about 15 quintillion bugs in these aeration tanks where they're eating up all the solids, they're absorbing the phosphorus and the nitrogen, which is a pollutant in our environment.
We're taking out the solids and turning that into fertilizer. So one of our principles is to recover resources from wastewater. So seeing it not as a waste product, not as something that is just the end of the line, but is a beginning once it gets cleaned up. So we are cleaning water to protect public health and the environment, making sure that that water that we send out of our treatment plant is safe for the ecosystems, the fish, the aquatic life in the streams, as well as people who are using those streams, and that we can use the resources to enhance life.
Everybody brings a unique skill set to the table, and at the end of the day, we are all able to come together.
It doesn't matter who you are, people will all pitch in and get the job done.
We work together very well from our engineers, our chemists and scientists, and daily operations.
It's a big focus. Not only are we treating the wastewater, but we also got to make sure we can do it safely for our workers so that they can go home to their family every night, but also the environment. We don't want to have, pollution out there in the environment. We want to be good stewards of the environment.
Now what we're trying to do is clean the water up in the watershed or in people's homes before it even comes to us. So the water is actually cleaner when we get it than we have in the past.
To know that we have the responsibility at the wastewater plant to keep water clean and to keep the water cycle moving is something that I think we're lucky to do.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that video. We are actually premiering it today on our social media accounts. It actually is in tandem. We're launching this in tandem with publicly rolling out our new website as well. So really just a new look and feel for the district. So as people engage with us and look to find additional information, they're experiencing lots of newness with the district in terms of our public facing channels. So happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. And our video will be is on YouTube and our social media channels as well, if you want to share it or view it again.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Nice job. Will the other video that you produced be up at the same time?
No, that one we're holding on just a little bit. We actually had only planned on doing one video, but we had such great content and that the company actually just did a second one for us for free. So that was really nice of them to pull together that second one. And the theme of that one is respect every drop.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Grant, you got your hand up?
Yeah, that was really great. In addition to the kind of YouTube and social media, is the video itself on the new website also? And it's
Yes, it will be later today. I just need to add it after this meeting, but it will be under, I think it's news and resources, and there's a media center page.
Awesome. You probably were going to do it already, but if you could just send that out once it's uploaded, would love to share that link on my next update.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to do that. Thank you for asking.
Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I don't see any other hands. Let's move on to regulatory and legal report. Paul?
Well, good morning. Gosh, that's a tough act to follow. We're going from an amazing video to kind of an update on regulations. So I'll try and make this brief anyway. You have a written material in your packet. I think the one thing I want to just note is where we are with PFAS rules. There are 3 rules that have now gone through the public hearing, and the last one, the groundwater rule, just completed the comment period earlier this week. All 3 of these rules are scheduled to go to the Natural Resources Board for authorization at their February meeting. If the board decides not to act on them, to get more information or do something else, it is likely that they will run out of their time frame for the scope statement, and so the process would need to start over. If, on the other hand, the board does approve the rules, they would then go to the legislature, but given the legislature's current floor period and their schedule for the year, it's not exactly clear whether they would act on them either. So it's a little bit of an uphill battle to see whether these rules will progress. Certainly, in general, the rule that relates to surface water, I think, has been one that we have generally supported because of its pragmatic approach and very consistent with what the district has been doing to deal with these things proactively. But whether these rules will pass, I think, is a big question at this point. I do think that at least having gotten as far as it is and having gotten the rules to EPA and having not a lot of objection from them, I think it at least establishes a template for either the next round of rules or other things in the future. So I do think it's been a useful process, even if the rules aren't adopted, but I wanted to just kind of give you that overview. So other than that, there's not a lot going on. I think the further we get into this year and the election cycle, the less things are going to be happening on a number of fronts. So it's going to be, I think, a relatively quiet period, but we will certainly keep monitoring it. Be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Anybody have any questions? Okay, don't see any. Thanks.
Yep, you bet.
Okay, that takes us future meeting schedule. That's in the packet. The next meeting will be on the 27th of the month. And future agenda topics. Any other business and adjournment? Tom?
I'll move we adjourn. Wilson.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson.
I'll be happy to second that, Murphy. And
Second
the
by
next,
Commissioner Murphy.
and by
Okay,
the
all
next
those in-
meeting, I'll have my camera working.
Okay.
Oh, no.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? None. Motion carries. Have a good rest of the week, everybody. Stay
So long,
healthy.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Take
Janelle,
care.
I'll see you at 11 o'clock or so.
Likewise.
Yep, actually, when you come in, Commissioner Hubble, you're just coming into the front desk and my teammates are there and they will get you to where you need to go for signing.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.